This is Agronomy Moment. I'm Wendell Cohen.
What is going on here?
David.
Hey.
What's up, Ringer?
How are you?
Good.
Good to
Well,
see
it's
you
good
both.
to see ya.
Thanks for joining us here.
Is this what I think this is?
It is.
Are you recording a podcast?
Recording, and you are live. I mean, you're going down.
Uh-oh. So like the camera's picking up on everything I'm saying?
is.
Yep.
I'm going to have to be very careful
Yeah,
with what
you,
I'm about to
you
say.
interrupt at exactly the right time or wrong, depending on how you look at it.
Man, sorry to interrupt. That was not my intention. But,
Yeah, but
if
you
they're
know,
wasting your time, their time on your podcast,
yes.
shouldn't they waste their time on mine?
Hey, what do you
Oh,
got?
yeah.
Why
What do you
not?
got?
Well, that's
Across the Acres with Beck's Hybrids. It is a fantastic opportunity for you to learn more about Beck's Hybrids. Not only our customers, our employees, our dealers, who and what we are, our culture, and the unique things that we bring to the table. So I invite you on the
Yes.
podcast provider of your choice to follow along with Across the Acres, a Beck's Hybrids podcast.
And it's a lot of fun. You do fun stuff on there,
Well,
right?
thank you. I
Yes.
think we do. Yeah.
Yep.
We even interviewed Bethany Gremmel here back in January.
Yep.
And Tim Newcomb the month before that. So we have famous people on our podcast.
Yes.
The original episode was Corey Beck. And hopefully we'll get Scott one of these times. But,
Yep.
Well, shoot, maybe we should have Wendell Cohen.
Celena.
Oh, we should have Celena.
Nobody wants to listen
Have
to me.
interesting people.
Have
on there.
interesting people?
I'm the agronomy base type of stuff, so I just saying.
I think he's pretty interesting, don't you?
Well, yeah.
Well, only because of the people.
That's right.
Yes.
We'll get you
Yes.
next time.
Yes. Okay.
Well, hey, I'm interrupting. Sorry. You guys enjoy.
Yes.
Have a great rest of your day. And again, catch out Across the Acres on
Across
a
the
podcast
Acres.
provider of your choice.
Across the Acres. It's a Beck's podcast. You can find it anywhere you find your podcasts.
Absolutely. Good to see you, my
Thank
friend.
you, sir.
Behave.
See ya.
Selena,
Good to
thank
see you
you.
again.
Good to see you.
See ya. See you. All right. Welcome back, Celena, to this podcast on planters, right?
Yes.
Corn planters, and specifically setting up the plant, your planter for corn. And so let's share this slide and we'll get started. So the point here is to kind of focus on mainly the PFR, right? The PFR proven parts of the pre-plant planter setup. And so we will dive into that a little bit, some systems practices on corn, and then we'll finish up with a comment about Clayton Stufflebeam and the experience we had at a planter clinic recently. It was
absolutely.
really good.
It was
so
really good. If you didn't get an opportunity, we're put a plug in at the end, but it was
Yes.
awesome.
It was good, and if you didn't get an opportunity, we're going to give you a link to
Yep.
a video you can watch on your own. That's put out by Beck's. It's his last year's planter clinic video, and it's very good. So let's talk about this. PFR this last year did a return on investment by omission of a planter practice product type thing.
I think if you want to hit on kind of your take on it, and
Okay.
then, after that, then I'll kind of
All right.
sum it up.
So I kind of dove in here. If you look at this chart here that talks about the multi-location success strategies, and I'm going to just kind of like point something out, like maybe these solid rubber closing wheels. If you would omit that out of all of these four strategies, the way I would understand there'd be like a 1405 loss. But let's say you didn't do any of those other strategies and you simply had a closing wheel potential loss of just that by itself. There's really a $32 and some cents that, and the kind of the point of doing that is just to kind of highlight is that 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 does not equal 5 or 4 things type of thing. But adding those all up is much more success and profitability than doing just 1 or 2 or 3 of them of the 4. And so anyway, you take it from there.
The return on investment there and keying in on that and what each brings to the table, and whether it be practices or and products, whatever the case may be, and taking them and saying that, because sometimes we'll get questions, well, if I do all of these, then I should get $100 return on investment. And well, I get that, but no, that's not exactly correct. So this study, I just really like how they did this last year, breaking it down and omitting one practice from each. So you can see all those comparisons, and you can find it in the PFR book also. But I just really enjoy this study that we did, because we do get a lot of questions about it, and it just kind of focuses in on, okay, well, if you were to omit one thing, or like kind of on Wendell's point, if you're going to do one thing, here's what to look at, and here is the ROI that it could potentially bring. So I just like how it's a, not all the success strategies are not a one-to-one, like you said. Exactly. And so I think this is a really, really cool study.
Yes, it was. And by doing this, you can have what would you call it, a 4-pronged success strategy by adding them all together. Let's talk a little bit about, let's just run through the proven products that we picked out here.
Yeah. So obviously these are some, and we've got a lot of good PFR products, and these are more specifically, these are proven, and our closing wheel system, I believe on this slide is the acres that it takes to pay. If you were to go out and buy closing wheels, whatever,
on a 16-row planter.
A 16-row planter. This is the amount of acres that corn acres, right? That it would take to pay for that system. So for example, our closing wheels, you need 109 acres of corn to pay for those closing wheels. And then just going down there, we got the closing system, 541, the downforce, which we really like to enjoy. We really enjoy talking about the 2x2x2 system, disc openers, and then the high speed. And Wendell likes to talk about the high speed a lot. I like to talk about the downforce because of the uniformity that it brings. And I believe we've got a slide coming up here, so I won't exactly go into depth here, but I believe it's on a couple slides, or slide down the way. So
I like to talk about the high speed because that's exciting. It's fun to go fast.
How fast can I plant my corn?
Clayton said the other night, he said it's addicting, and it is. I mean, once you go 9 miles an hour and you're seeing the beautiful singulation, then it's like, oh, I can't go 5. But in all seriousness, I think the thing about high speed to remember is that you drive faster, and typically Clayton said that when you get past like that 6.5 miles per hour on your planter speed, things really start falling apart at 7. You start really starting to see the seed bounce and all the stuff, bad things that happen. And to think about what that speed could do is if you could drive 9 and get an equatable result of your planting quality when you know that your window to plant is X. Like a lot of times you kind of know about that time, okay, now we can start planting, but the conditions aren't right. And then the conditions get right and they have rain forecasted. And looking at high speed, the 59% greater ability to, or more acres is 59% more, right? I think I said that right.
59% more.
And really no yield loss.
Right.
And that's like, I think that's more like a 7.5 or 8, maybe. I can't remember my numbers exactly versus 5.
Right.
So
it's just fascinating, honestly, because Clayton pointed out, he's like, if you would have told me however many years ago that we were gonna have we would be able to plant 10 miles an hour, he said, I would have told you you're crazy, and I would have thought the same exact thing. But it's just come to life, really.
Yes, exactly. Especially we look at, more volume of acres in today's world typically, and then it seems like our storms are more frequent and we have those tighter windows, and when it's actually good.
We can capitalize, we need to capitalize.
That's right. However, I mean, we could throw the negative side into to the point of what happens when you drive high speed in conditions that aren't good.
Right.
I mean, you're compounding, you're taking a high powered rifle and you're doing damage with it instead of bringing food for the family table. So everything that's powerful has its flip side. However, I do think that the high speed has a place. It's hard to put acres on it because how do you do that?
Right.
And so for the sake of this today, just want to point out is 59% faster. And if you put that in, and I really would think it'd be neat to put that in a time perspective and say, let's say that you have 3 weeks to get your corn planting done, or let's say you have 2 weeks. and it takes you 2.5 weeks.
Yep.
And then the rest of it's going to be outside that window. You know, if you went 59% faster, you know, what would that look like to you?
Right.
How much spraying would you get done on top of that? That's what we noticed last year with high speed, is how much spraying we were able to get done after we had got the planning process done. Like it freed up time for other farming processes to be on time, not just the planning process. So it's just a lot of things to think about.
Dominoes kind of fell into place there, it sounds like.
Yep, for sure. Okay, planting depth. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so yeah, proper planting depth crucial with corn and soybeans, but just ensuring we're at that 2 inches. I don't know. I didn't put it on here, but yeah, 2 inches on corn, and just ensuring good seed to soil contact.
Yes.
Planting into good consistent moisture, and
maintaining that depth.
Mm-hmm.
And then to your point on downforce, talk about what happens when you don't have good downforce to depth and so on.
Yeah. So with the conditions we're dealing with, different soil types, whether it be a bottom, whether it be terraces, whatever the case may be, we're dealing with soil type changes, and potentially in our hills, we're going to be dealing with elevation changes throughout the field. So I just think it's really cool how the downforce system, you can automate on the go, and it's going to change with your field conditions to ensure that you're getting a proper, really precise downforce setting instead of like our manual settings that we've historically been used to. So that's really cool with the downforce system.
And I think that Clayton in his video, if you all take the time to watch it, explains how he would stick the trowel in the trench after the downforce. You'd run different levels and identify really what it should be, medium or higher.
Yeah.
And what reveals in that is you don't want to over squish that sidewall with your gauge wheel, and not under either. You need to have firmness there that's not collapsing, because then you have dry soil falling on seed, but you don't want it so crushed and smashed that you're actually furrowing.
Yeah, and then those pockets, those air pockets too. We don't want those air pockets. And if he does show that in his video, that's really cool thing to pay attention to.
Yep. For sure. Talk about date versus conditions.
Yeah, so with corn, we want to really key on, I think it's that mid to late April time frame.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're going to be flexible with that according to our conditions, because we don't want to go out there and just because we're planting at 2 inches and it's April 20th and we got to plant our corn, but it's wet, or conditions, the next day it looks like they're scheduling a 5-inch rain. Maybe that's something where we take that into consideration. So just, that's shown the best return on investment is that April, mid to late April time frame. And that little chart on there, the corn emergence based on planting conditions is going to compare, your darker soils, your clay soils, and, gosh dang it, planting date. And so you think about, the later you plant, the probably more challenges the plant is going to have to overcome. You think about disease pressure is going to be heavier on a later planted corn crop than maybe an earlier planted. So just things like that as far as agronomics that can benefit the crop.
And weighing that risk up, sometimes, good conditions a little early can outweigh, a poor condition that can happen when you start the monsoon season in May, and just things like that.
That makes me think, that point makes me think about getting the corn crop through pollination before conditions get too stressful. Because
the heat in July and
that's the most important time in that crop is pollination. So, with the earlier planting, we probably have a better chance of maximizing on that planting date by, and that kind of just goes into my more stressful conditions that, your plant's going to have to overcome, but specifically focusing on that pollination.
What about corn depth? We talked about that just a little bit, that 2-inch mark, but help us understand why.
Okay. Yeah. So we think about the 2 inches, like I said, we're going to have more consistent moisture at 2 inches than shallower.
Yes.
And then planting too shallow, we could be dealing with really, really poor root structures. We could deal with rootless corn,
Yes.
and not setting those roots where we need them to set. And that's just really important because it's going to lead to getting your corn planted at the proper depth is going to help you agronomically because it's going to be uniform moisture. It's going to be able to support itself because it has a good root structure. If you have rootless corn or really shallow root system, it's not going to be able to handle a wind situation, a high wind situation. So a storm, you're better equipped with those roots, with those roots setting in too. And then again, the flip side of that, we can get too deep.
Sure.
And there we deal with loss of vigor, potential loss of stand, and things like that. So there's kind of two flip sides there. And
PFR has proven that 2 inches is your best step. You talked about moisture moderation. There's also temperature moderation as well. When you get really cold at night and then you have that warm up, you can tend to swing the temps further. And one thing to remember is, right, once the seed initiates imbibition of water, there's a chemical process that can't be reversed, right? It's like a plane that's just leaving the runway. There's no return.
Right.
And so if we become really hot, really cold, those things all weigh in on that plant's vigor.
Yep.
And
exactly.
a little bit deeper, there actually can be a degree or two of temperature. It can make a difference between seeing the top. I can tell you times where walk fields and that growing point was right there. And 1 or 2 degrees of temperature, a little more moderation of moisture, we would have had a stand.
Yep.
But it just couldn't quite do that because
get there.
It was too wet, too cold, whatever. So
moral of the story here also is let's plant into some ideal or good conditions, whatever that looks like.
Yes. And so we're going to get back to finally wrap up with our how. Put the boots back on, go out to your shop, look at your planter now. Look at, especially it used to be a year ago. I mean, we were really afraid we weren't going to get parts. And so that was like a really critical thing. It's getting better, but still getting out there and identifying what, like Clayton said, every planter that goes put away is in perfect condition. You get it out and it somehow between October and now, or last summer and now, it has become.
And he talks about the monitor situation, and which I think might be important to say here is that, you get your planter going, and what's the first thing that goes wrong in the field? And he said, I guarantee you almost every time it's probably the monitor or technology or whatever. So just another thing to look into.
Yes, for sure. So if you want, grab that link on the screen, type it in as you see it to Clayton's video on his clinic, his planter tune-up video. And then below there is a link also to an agronomy talk paper with more step-by-step spelling out the different parts so you can read at your leisure or scan that code with your phone. And so we want to thank everyone that made this possible, this show possible, and especially Celena, thank you.
Absolutely.
And we thank you for watching. We'll
see you next time.
Everyone, thank you for joining us today on Agronomy Moment, a Top Ag Services production. If you want alerts on what we are finding in the field, go to topagservices.com/signups to receive alerts, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's our goal to bring you the most recent and advanced information possible. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out to us anytime. We also ask you that you give us a like and follow our channel wherever you listen to your podcasts or watch these videos. This ultimately helps us reach more people like you.
Hello?
Hey, this has been Wendell Cohen, your show host. Thank you to all who made this show possible. This show is over. See ya.